Comic Book Savant, episode 351.
I know this. This I know. All that I have, all that is me, resides inside my poetry. And every time I write a rhyme, it might be the line that sets mine free. And also, I know that I don't.
Welcome to the Comic Book Savant podcast. I'm your host, James Harris. This week, I'm going to go back and do something I did a few episodes ago when I did a fixing of the DC cinematic universe. I'm going to do a similar thing, but this time we're going to apply it to Fox's X-Men universe. I had a lot of fun doing it. It seemed like you guys really enjoyed it, and I might make this an ongoing series considering we have so many comic book franchises ongoing and joined cinematic universes. It's kind of a good fantasy type thing that we can open that can up and discuss it, and hopefully if it gets into the right people's hands, they take some of these suggestions that we have and apply it to some of these movies to make these franchises better. So, with that being said, before I get into the meat of the episode, I'd like to give a shout out to my friends over at the Comics Podcast Network. You can find them over at comicspodcast.com. Excuse me, my voice is already going. It's just a good place to, if you enjoy the content that I create here and you want to find more related content, you can go over to comicspodcast.com. There are literally hundreds of different comic book related podcasts, video shows, etc. that you can find, try out. It's a great place, just a one-stop shop or a portal to just try to find and research more shows and more content. So if you have a moment, stop by, check it out. I think you will definitely find something that you like. If you ever forget the link, you can also go to the comicbooksavant.com webpage, and I have a link to the Comics Podcast Network and the links on the links page, as well as some different podcasters that I've collabed with that are friends of the show that you can go to and check out as well. So there's plenty of ways that you can get to more content if you enjoy this and you want more good content. I highly recommend anything that you mainly would find over there and through my friends as well. A lot of these podcasters I've collabed with over the years of creating the show, and they're close friends, and they put out really good shows. So if you have a moment, check them out. And after you check them out, I do recommend shoot them an email, shoot them a follow on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, and let them know, hey, I'm here and I like your content. It always means a lot to a content creator when they hear back from the people that are listening to their content. So if you have a moment, do that. Really would appreciate it. And last but not least, I'd like to give a shout out to my friends over at In Stock Trades and InStockTrades.com. They sponsor this episode and every episode. We've had a long-running partnership for as long as the podcast has been going. They are just the best place to go on the internet when you're looking for collected editions, trade paperbacks, omnibuses, Marvel Masterworks, Absolute Editions, you name it. If it's collected and traded, they normally have it or can get it for you. They have discounts ranging from 35%, 42% up to 50% off with their deals of the week. If you go to InStockTrades.com on the homepage, they update that weekly where they have anywhere from 5 to 10. It fluctuates on how many books that they have. It normally is at least 5. It can be, sometimes I've seen up to 10, up to more for their deals of the week. So you have to keep checking that homepage because it changes weekly on what books are featured, and you get that extra discount on. Also, if you order $50 or more, you get free shipping if you're a U.S. customer, and that's within the U.S. If you're an international customer, you don't get that extra bonus, but you still get all the great savings that you find on the site, and they have some of the cheapest and most competitive international shipping rates around, so you will save a ton of money, so no worries on that. So, and I'd like to also segue into, we're reaching the end of the month. It was a contest that they're sponsoring for me for the 11-year anniversary of the podcast, and that we just had like I said, they've been a great partner. We're coming up right at the end of the month when you're hearing this, and you still can actually apply to win or register to win in the giveaway. We're giving away 3 gift certificates in stocktrades.com, a $75, a $50, and a $25. So, I mean, we're pushing up right against it right now when this comes out. But if you haven't applied, it's 1 entry per listener. And you just go to comicbooksavant.com, go to the contact page, and it's a form, email form, and just in the subject line put contest or 11-year anniversary. As long as you don't designate in the header that it's for the contest, just put contest in there and just put your information. That will register you in the drawing for one of those 3 gift certificates that will be I will announce the winner the first episode of September. So definitely be on the lookout for that. And I appreciate all their support, again, in their longtime partnership. They've been with me from the very beginning, and I appreciate their support and allowing me to give something back to you guys with that contest. So definitely stop by, check them out, let them know you heard about them here on the show. And back to the meat of the episode, which is trying to fix the X-Men cinematic universe. At this point, we've had 10 films to date, to my recollection, that have been released from Fox in their X-Men universe. We started out back in, this has been going on in 2000. It started with X-Men. Then we had X-Men X2, X-Men United. We have X-Men The Last Stand. Then we had X-Men Origins Wolverine that came out. So let me start back from the beginning. We had X-Men that came out in 2000. 2003, we had X2, X-Men United. And 2006, we had X-Men The Last Stand. In 2009, we had X-Men Origins Wolverine. In 2011, we had X-Men First Class. In 2013, we had the Wolverine. In 2014, we had X-Men Days of Future Past. In 2016, I want to say, I forgot to put the year for this, Deadpool came out. And then also in 2016, we had X-Men Apocalypse. And then this year, we've had 2017, we had Logan. So we've had 10 films. The high points for some people out of the movies that have been released, probably the stellar standouts of these 10 movies would probably be X2, X-Men United, I would say is a standout. I would say Days of Future Past is a standout. Deadpool is a standout. And for sure Logan, which I think probably is, that's the top echelon of these 10 movies. Those would be the top ones I would recommend that are the top tier of this franchise. Continuity has been a huge sticking point with this franchise of movies, because we started with the earlier X-Men movies, X-Men X2 and X-Men Last Stand, that was one continuity with one set of X-Men that was set in the present day. Those movies ran its course. X-Men 3 made a decent amount of money. X-Men Last Stand made a decent amount of money, but was horribly received. It was a lot going on, because the first 2 movies were directed by Bryan Singer. He left the project to do Superman Returns, and he didn't go on to do X3. They brought on Brett Ratner to take over the duties. The script was just a mess, and it wasn't received as well as the first 2 movies were. It made money, but it was not the best movie at all. And so that the franchise fell off for quite a few years. They came back they were going to do a series of spin-off movies. They were supposed to do, and it was announced at that point in time, before the movie went into production, that they were going to do a branding of spin-off movies entitled X-Men Origins, and they were going to do 3 of them it was originally rumored and talked about. It was going to be a Wolverine one. It was going to be a Magneto one. And it was going to be a Storm movie. They were all going to be labeled X-Men Origins in the character. It only ended up being X-Men Origins Wolverine that came out, and it was poorly received. And I think that kind of killed that run of movies that they were going to do titled X-Men Origins. Because to keep the rights going, they had to keep X-Men in the title somehow. When it came to those properties, how it was explained at that time. So that's why they had the tag of X-Men Origins, blah, blah. And like I said, it was supposed to be 3 movies focused on those 3 central characters, but only the Wolverine one was made, wasn't received well, didn't do well. So it kind of put the kibosh on that, and that kind of went away for a couple of years. Then Matthew Vaughn came on with the idea of doing X-Men First Class, where they were going to go back, and it was kind of going to be a soft reboot or a revitalization of the franchise by doing the X-Men from the beginning in the 60s, where we saw a young Charles Xavier. The role was originally played by Patrick Stewart. Now we had James McAvoy playing the Charles Xavier role. We had Michael Fassbender playing the Eric Lesher or Magneto role. And it was a good refresh. It wasn't the greatest movie of all time, but it was a good start. Matthew Vaughn did a real good job revitalizing the franchise and kind of doing this soft reboot. We had a up-and-coming actress, Jennifer Lawrence, that most people, she was really just starting off with the Hunger Games and, films there. She quickly, shortly after First Class, blew up to a megastar, which helped the subsequent sequels, which we'll get to in a moment. Then we had The Wolverine, which teamed the great director James Mangold with Hugh Jackman. This movie was a vast improvement over Wolverine Origin, X-Men Origins Wolverine. It's a mouthful. But it was also even a different timeline, because now with X-Men First Class and even X-Men Origins Wolverine, they were all separate timelines from the timeline that was established in the first 3 X-Men movies, because the Wolverine movie was set, it was an origin story, so it was in the past, showing kind of everything that led up to where we found Wolverine in the first X-Men movie back in 2000. So it was kind of a retroactive origin story prequel to Wolverine, since really in those first 3 X-Men movies, he was our lens into the X-Men. He was our principal point of view and perspective. So in doing that movie, that was a prequel. So, that was pre-2000 X-Men. Then we had X-Men First Class, which now we're delving into further in the continuity as a prequel. Now you have a whole new set of actors. Now you're in the 60s, and it gave it some freedom for that movie. But again, now the timeline is getting a little wonky depending on which movie you saw when, and how it's all interconnected and how it's all interwoven. And he had different tidbits and characters explored throughout the movies. We had in X-Men First Class a little scene where the X-Men, when they were recruiting, they tried to get Logan, and he told them to F off. And so we had ties where they did try to recruit him early, but then he ended up finding his way back to Charles many years later in the X-Men movie when he found him in that movie, and we go from there. Then with the Wolverine, it kind of picks up. It kind of picks up. Wait, did it come out in 2013 or 2014? I'm looking at the dates. I had the years that they were released, but I thought... No, that's right. So the Wolverine came out in 2013. I was just trying to think about the different cuts I've seen of all these movies, because all these movies have different cuts and deleted scenes that I've watched all of, and I'm just trying to put it all together. So the Wolverine was truly in the timeline in this jumbled X-Men continuity. The Wolverine is actually the first movie in these batches of movies since X-Men: The Last Stand that is a true sequel as far as timeline is concerned. So it was from 2006 all the way to 2013. We hadn't had a follow-up with the mutants in the universe that we were from the original trilogy of X-Men movies to the Wolverine, which serves as a sequel timeline-wise of this is a Wolverine after the events of X-Men's Last Stand. He feels guilt for having to kill Jean, which was a woman he loved. He had left the X-Men. He was dealing with a lot of guilt in relation to it. And the very ending of the movie set up the lead-in to where we see Wolverine in X-Men Days of Future Past the following year. The stinger leads with, Xavier and Charles, coming to get Wolverine when he comes off the plane from coming back home to Japan months later. So it kind of sets up the lead in to Days of Future Past. Then Days of Future Past is a unique movie because it combines the original X-Men movies with the Days of Future Past continuity in one thing. And by the end of the movie, they use it as a vessel to clear up some of the mistakes made by X-Men: The Last Stand, and basically wiping away the bad taste out of the fans' mouths of certain events that happened previously that they weren't comfortable with, which was cool. But the problem was when we got to X-Men Apocalypse, they didn't follow up on these things very well, which caused, and certain things were just totally just unexplained, which then it was like, did it really clean the slate? If they just had followed up on the plot lines, it really could have been a soft kind of reboot that the franchise needed, and they totally dropped the ball, because Deadpool's in the universe but was unrelated, and Deadpool's that kind of character. So when that came out in 2016, it made a lot of fun of the screwy continuity and the same characters being played by different actors in different time periods and all that. Deadpool was really fun when being able to poke fun at all the craziness and continuity that the X-Men films had going on at that point. And frankly, we still have going on at this point. Because like I said, Days of Future Past was constructed that it really could have been the soft reboot in the slate cleaner that they needed, but when you saw Apocalypse, they really dropped the ball on it. Now, I was talking about it the previous episode of some of my top trilogies, and one of my top 5 trilogies what I named was the X-Men. I guess it's X-Men Beginnings trilogy, which is considered to be X-Men First Class, X-Men Days of Future Past, and X-Men Apocalypse. My biggest issue, and one thing I felt like they really, really dropped the ball on in this trilogy, was that the core of the trilogy, of the Beginnings trilogy, is Michael Fassbender's Eric Lesher or Magneto, Jennifer Lawrence's Mystique or Raven character, and James McAvoy's Charles Xavier. And they kind of casted that all to the side, which Days of Future Past is very much about those 3. First Class is very much about those 3. And they really dropped the ball in Apocalypse and sidestepped that main thread, and to have it come full circle to set up what we knew the relationships between these characters to be, as what we saw in the original X-Men 2000 movie. They went left and didn't. That was the emotional payoff as us as fans, because we followed these characters and they were very engaging and handled very well by the actors, especially the Xavier Magneto relationship. They did a really good job, and the chemistry between McAvoy and Fassbender's undeniable, and they just totally dropped the ball. And they touched on it very briefly in Apocalypse, and they spent so much focus on Apocalypse, which they just totally messed up. Which he's such a integral part of the X-Men universe and one of their really big bads next to Magneto. He's like that ultimate foil, and he just totally fumbled it on so many levels. And on that part, it was very disappointing that it made that movie come off really flat, because I wanted the emotional payoff of this journey of Eric and Charles, and how did they end up so far apart. We had been building to it. We understood their differences in philosophy. We even saw throughout the movies Magneto try to go clean and just go away from, the war between humans and mutants. But they just didn't finish that storyline off. They just left that there to kind of flap in the wind, which was just so disappointing. And so that was, one thing that they dropped the ball with. And then Logan is even, another version of continuity, because we don't know what continuity Logan is in. It's one of the better X-Men movies out of this 10 film franchise at this point. But we really honestly don't know what universe it's in, and what continuity it's in. It's, is it post Days of Future Past? But they changed the past and the future in Days of Future Past if we saw the ending of the movie. So, but is it in the same continuity of the Wolverine that came out in 2013, or the continuity of X-Men Days of Future Past? They've done some time traveling and and they changed events in history. They don't make it clear, and it's kind of like you just accept it because it's a good movie, but it even further complicates the timeline of how all this leads together and how it's all interconnected. And like I said, they had the perfect slate cleaner with Days of Future Past, and they just didn't follow up on it to kind of straighten it. And they've even made things even more messier, because you have that movie where, okay, we changed things. This movie, because essentially by the end of Days of Future Past, X-Men The Last Stand is totally wiped off the board at that point. And it should have changed certain events from X-Men Origins Wolverine as well. But they don't follow up, because they have the whole thread of where young Stryker, Mystique Raven is impersonating him at the end of Days of Future Past, and she digs out Wolverine's body from the ocean, but they don't follow up on that at all. So, and then you see this whole scene with Wolverine, and where Jean and Cyclops, young versions of them, help Logan escape from the Weapon X program when they're captured by them, but you don't know how it all ties in at all from what we saw in X-Men Apocalypse to these other movies. So it just makes it even more convoluted and even harder to follow if you're trying to follow a through line through these movies, how they're all interconnected and what timeline. And another big mistake that I feel like is made, it worked well for X-Men First Class. And I think Days of Future Past was its own movie because it was, I felt the purpose of the movie was to reset the continuity, though they didn't follow up on it. That's what it was served as. So I didn't mind them. They played around in the two different timelines with the two different sets. I thought that was actually really cool and ingenious to do. But then you got Apocalypse, then they go back, each time when they go back in time, it was the 60s, it was the 70s, X-Men Apocalypse was the 80s. It worked for the first movie, and they tied it to a historical event. So it worked. The other two movies, I guess at that point, everything else is so screwed up, but, we were stuck in this past, and we know what's coming, Fox has announced, we got 3 X-Men movies coming up in 2018. We have the New Mutants that's going to be coming out April 13th, 2018. We have Deadpool 2 that's coming out June 1st, 2018. And then we have the next sequel, and I guess in what we consider the proper X-Men franchise at this point, X-Men proper films, and the Dark Phoenix coming out November 2nd, 2018. Here's the thing. As far as what we know very little about the New Mutants. It's the, spinoff of the New Mutants from the 80s series. Now, what they've said, the director has said about the movie, is that we're not going to see them in costumes. There's going to be more of a horror type element to it, and the horror of them coming to grips of using their powers. I think it's based on the Demon Bear storyline. I probably read it as a kid, don't really remember it. I read a ton of New Mutants comics. I remember they were super popular. Can't remember all of them because I read so many comics back then. The name of that series didn't pop off to me, but I pretty much read those monthly back in the day, so I know I've probably read it. We don't know too much about that at this point, or what timeline, what continuity. We don't know much, about how, again, it further either straightens or further muddies this whole continuity and timeline thing. Then we have Deadpool 2, which is cool because Deadpool is his own thing entirely for the most part, though it's connected. And I'm going to get back to that in a second. And then the Dark Phoenix, like I said, far as what we know going in, is following the thread coming off of X-Men Apocalypse. It's going to be, I'm assuming, set in the 90s, since the Apocalypse was set in the 80s. We're following up with the cast of McAvoy, Fassbender, and Lawrence. They all are coming back. Here's my first suggestion to them, because my problem is they have gone out of their way to make Jennifer Lawrence's Mystique character, which in the original trilogy, she was a sidekick to Magneto. She never really shined or was anything more than kind of his right hand lady, right hand man, whatever, right hand person. That's the politically correct way to say that. It was his right hand person, but she was never a centralized character to the point of she was as important as Xavier or any of the other X-Men, really. At that point, she was just a bona fide henchman in a way. But since they had Jennifer Lawrence in the role, and she became a star so quickly after they snagged her to play Raven Mystique in the first X-Men First Class, that they've made her a bigger and bigger part of the franchise. The biggest problem with that being is that she really didn't seem too interested in being a centralized character in this franchise, but they need to put butts in seats, and that's how the movie business works. But, the makeup, and you start seeing her less and less as the blue Mystique. We saw different techniques used in X-Men Apocalypse. We really saw her as Mystique as little as possible, and it seemed like they did a CGI overlay, because I could imagine all the makeup and to do her whole body in blue and scales and stuff like that has to be an arduous and maybe painful process for an actor to go through. So we saw it less and less, and she just really seemed uninterested in the character. I felt like her performance in the first movie was solid. Even in the second movie, though, coming out of the second movie, kind of like when that was released, when Days of Future Past came out, she kind of came back and was like, she really wanted to be done with the franchise. And it just kind of felt like, for the most part, in X-Men Apocalypse, she really just melded in and didn't want to be there. So I was really surprised when she came back, but hey, it's a big ongoing franchise. They probably paid her a ton of money, and she did state that the only way she would come back is if the other two came back. I felt like it's a need to bring those two back. It's not really a need to bring her back. But again, name recognition. She's a superstar, megastar at this point. Why not? But my first recommendation is lessen her role, because if you're naming your next movie The Dark Phoenix, it's supposed to be about Jean Grey and the Phoenix and Scott and the X-Men. So we have to kind of branch out and lessen the role of the surrounding characters that we went through the Beginnings trilogy with the McAvoy and Magneto and her. They have to start tailing to support leadership roles and then let these young actors. I felt like they did a really good job casting the actors for Storm, Jean, and Cyclops, and even Nightcrawler and poor Jubilee. We're not going to talk about the little girl that played Jubilee and just all her scenes got on the cutting room floor in Apocalypse, which was really bad because they had her doing press. So much press, and then she doesn't show up in the movie. It's just really jacked up. But hopefully, we see her some maybe in this sequel because she deserves it. But and focus on those characters because they're going to be the central piece, and they're going to be what carries us through this next set of movies that they possibly could do because they filmed them young, and we still kind of have to catch up. But if this one is in the 90s and the other one was in 2000, you have the 10-year time jump. You can't keep doing. Like, they're gonna have to find some creative way to handle now we're finally kind of coming up against it to what we knew of the X-Men. And we have certain contradictions because in X2, at the end of X2, we saw the first air quotes emergence of the Phoenix. Well, we know that's not right because now we know that Jean had an outbreak of the Phoenix back in the 80s in X-Men Apocalypse now. So now, again, continuity is further screwy because of that, or because of the events of Days of Future Past. Did it wipe out all three of the first movies worth of continuity? We don't know because it never really specified what it fixed and what it cleared up. It was clear by what we saw because certain people that died in X-Men Last Stand were now alive. So we knew it wiped out the events of what happened in that movie, but we didn't see how far-reaching that went. We just saw that. It wasn't narrated. We just saw it visually that, oh, this person and this person and this person, they died in that movie and now they're walking around. So things have clearly changed, but we didn't know to what extent. So how does it come up against it when the importance of the original franchise that started all this, the first trilogy, where all this lies? Again, it gives me a headache just thinking about it, me trying to explain it to you guys. But that's where we're at. So we do have those three movies coming out next year, but then Fox went and announced that they just announced dates at this point. So I'm going to speculate based on what we know on what these movies could be. They announced 6 dates: June 7th, 2019, November 22nd, 2019, March 13th, 2020, June 26th, 2020, October 2nd, 2020, and March 5th, 2021. So here's what I'm going with at this point. Now, we have New Mutants launching, Deadpool 2 launching, and Dark Phoenix launching next year. So, and that's 2018. Now, it was a Gambit movie that made it pretty far in production. I read reports that sets were being made. They were in the process of, shooting. They had directors dropping out left and right. The movie had a crazy budget. It was a lot of behind the scenes stuff that was going on with the Gambit movie. We know, far as everything we know, Tatum Channing is still signed to play Gambit in a Gambit movie. To me, at this point, coming off of, if those 3 movies are being released in 2018, that the only thing that they had in the works that could be potential to come out the year later would be that Gambit movie. Because they did a lot of different takes, a lot of different script writing, and they've been super quiet on it. So if they've still been developing it and just decided not to go public with it because of all the backlash they were getting, and I know they were very far in production, and they already had put money into that film, and so it only makes sense that if any movie is to come out in 2019, the only thing I could think of at this point is it's going to be a Gambit movie. So at that point, for that June 7th, 2019, to me would be a Gambit movie. I could be totally wrong, and they'll go totally surprise us, because it's remains to be seen what we have on the tail end coming out of these three films next year. On what could happen. We know they turned around the first Deadpool movie in like 9 months, I think, or so. It was less than a year from the time it was filmed and released. So they can make a movie, quick, but I don't know would they do that in this circumstance. Normal time for a sequel is about 2 years now, not 3 or 4 like it used to be, but about 2 years. So that in lies some of these other dates. Now, the other thing that was being rumored, that's why. So right now, what I'm thinking, the June 7th, 2019 date would be Gambit. So we can keep the X-Men franchises going with that movie finally hitting. I feel like the November 22nd date for 2019 is going to be some type of Fantastic Four reboot, or I can't remember what the guy's name is. He was the showrunner for the Legion series on Fox Television. He just made this announcement at Comic-Con that he was working on a movie, and he said Doctor Doom, and we don't know if it's a Fantastic Four reboot or some type of Doctor Doom standalone film, but it was put out there in the atmosphere. So I feel like, if anything, and they would have to put out another Fantastic Four movie soon to keep those rights, because they do not want them to go back to Marvel, forfeit them to Marvel. So they're going to keep at least making some attempt to keep the rights to the character. And if they just do a standalone Doom movie, even if it flops, it keeps the rights on their side. So, and it could probably be done a lot quicker than having to cast a whole new Fantastic Four, since the last Fantastic Four bombed. I think the process of trying to get that film off the ground might take them too long, unless they can get Michael B. Jordan, Miles Teller and Mira back to reprise the roles, and I don't think they can at this point, because it just was horrible. That movie was horrible. So I feel like it would probably be quicker to take like a character like Doom and just do a standalone, maybe prequel origin story, and play that. They could probably make that work in a quicker production time, turnaround time, and then you got to deal with all the effects. When you're dealing with the Fantastic Four with Doom, it would probably be way less. So I'm feeling that the November 22nd, 2019 would be some Fantastic Four movie to keep the rights to that franchise, be it a Doctor Doom, be it a full-blown reboot. It's going to be something, and it's going to be related to the Fantastic Four for that release date. I honestly believe it. Then that March 13th, 2020 date, I feel like would be a New Mutant sequel. It'll be right around just shy of 2 years from the time of the New Mutants' first movie to come out. They got a whole bunch of young actors. They're going to be signing contracts, and they're going to at least try to make this a trilogy. Only makes sense that 2 years after we drop the sequel. And then June, we got that June date locked down. Why not do Deadpool 3? It only makes sense for that June 26, 2020 would be 2 years. Deadpool's going to be a hot property unless Deadpool 2 tanks. And we already know they want to set up an X-Force movie, which I'm going to get to in just a moment as well. And so we're going to have that. We know we're getting Cable in Deadpool 2. We'll probably get more Cable, more Domino leading in to an X-Force film, which it was rumored at one point, because as soon as they started production on Deadpool 2, rumors were going around that Deadpool 3, they were already working on ideas for Deadpool 3, and it was something being said about Deadpool 3 and X-Force like being kind of shot together, kind of back to back. So it's going to be a tight tie-in with Deadpool, Cable, and the X-Force, and whatever their vision is for that whole side of the X-Men universe, because we don't really still know how it fits into continuity-wise from the other X-Men movies, and will they ever meet? And he shows up proper in one of the X-Men Dark Phoenix, like that, those characters, or not. We don't know, because they're in the past, and he's kind of grounded in the post, in the current day, which, like I said, that we have multiple timelines going on, because now after Days of Future Past, we got the one timeline with McAvoy, Fassbender, and Lawrence. That's a timeline. Like I said, Logan was his own thing. We don't know if the New Mutants is going to be his own thing. So we don't know, as far as that whole thing is concerned, if they'll ever meet, or Deadpool's, like, he's going to have his own section that consists of Deadpool, Cable, and X-Force. Or will it tie into the bigger? We don't know yet. And it's very confusing, and my head's starting to hurt while I'm talking about all this, trying to explain it. Anyway, so I feel like the June 26th date, 2020, would be Deadpool 3. It only makes sense. It's on that 2-year cycle. If Deadpool 2's a hit, Fox is really rolling. And, like, I was surprised when I really looked back, and I was like, wow, they really straight up have 3 X-Men movies coming out in 2018. Like, so Fox is all in, like, yo, we got something going. We had a hit with, and I think Deadpool really saved them. Days of Future Past, I don't think monetarily, for the money they invested in it, it paid out in the box office wise. I think it did very strong in home video, and critically it did pretty well. Deadpool was a mega hit for them because they had a low budget. It made buttloads of money. X-Men Apocalypse, sometimes it just happens. I feel like, It was, we're not going to talk about X-Men Apocalypse. It's depressing. And Logan was another banger. So they're on an upswing right now. When you look at that just crop out Days of Future Past, Deadpool, X-Men Apocalypse, and Logan, the only movie that really underperformed or maybe did the worst is Apocalypse. Like I said, Days of Future Past was kind of, they had to pivot. They had to pivot from where they were at, and they invested heavily in it. And I think ultimately, even if that movie didn't make them tons of money, it catapulted them where they felt confident they could do a rated R Deadpool movie. That killed for them. They did a rated R Logan movie. It killed for them. So I think it took the bad taste out of their mouths from whatever hit they took on Days of Future Past, and that they might have taken on Apocalypse, and they felt confident enough of where they're at with the X-Men now that they're setting up these dates, and 3 movies are filming. I know New Mutants is filming currently. Deadpool 2 we know is filming. And Dark Phoenix is either filming now or starting very soon, starting by September, if they're not already filming. I can't remember if it's not filming yet or starting to film. So they're down to get these movies out to us. So they're going to come, and I feel like they're going to keep the ball rolling unless it just come off the hinges and one of these 3 movies like tanks, or like 2 of these movies tank. But I just really can't see. The movie I'm worried the most about the 3 that we have coming in 2018, to be honest, is Dark Phoenix, because I hope they don't make a mistake, and we have this backdrop of the greatest X-Men story of all times, and then we're saddled with, I don't see how Raven or Mystique fits in that at all. I just don't. And I hope they don't try to make her this central Messiah character like they did in X-Men Apocalypse either. And I hope they don't do that, because it should be about Jean Grey and the X-Men and Cyclops and the core X-Men team at their time, and dealing with this, and Charles. So I hope the focus is where it needs to be, and not so much on Jennifer Lawrence's character at all. And I hope that what happens coming out of the Dark Phoenix, and I hope it is better than Apocalypse. I hope it's more trending towards the Days of Future Past as far as quality than Apocalypse, because we're introducing Shi'ar. We got Lilandra that's gonna be in the movie. They're gonna properly do this, and the X-Men are gonna go to space. So I hope in that we have James McAvoy goes off to space like he does in the original story, that he goes off to space to Lilandra, and Eric takes over the school. I don't know where this leaves Raven in the equation. I don't know. And I don't know because like she just phoned it in so much in the last movie. I really honestly didn't want to see her come back, but they threw money at her, I guess. And with the other two coming back, she said if they would, she would be willing. And they probably gave her a butt ton of money. She no longer has the Hunger Games franchise. So, hey, why not? And technology is getting more and more, advanced. So she probably has to put on the makeup less and less, and they could do it, color her, with effects instead of her having to go through a long, drawn-out makeup process. So, I just hope that she's a little bit more focused and into advancing the character where we're left off at the end of Apocalypse, with her kind of being the field leader for the X-Men. But I don't know if we jump forward 10 years and we have Cyclops and he's supposed to be a leader again, how she fits in that dynamic. But it remains to be seen. Like, I guess when trailers finally start being released for the movie, we can kind of get a better idea. But that's still going to be some time off if they haven't started filming yet, and it doesn't come out to the end of 2018. We wouldn't be seeing a trailer for that movie, a teaser trailer or something to that movie until like June of 2018, I would think. So it's still a ways off to know how they're going to handle that. It is going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And again, like I said, I feel like so that the June 26, 2020 date would be Deadpool 3. I feel like, the October 2nd, 2020 date would be an X-Men sequel. I don't know what that sequel would be, but I'm assuming it would be a sequel to The Dark Phoenix and whatever that would mean after the fallout of that film. And I think the March 5th, 2021 date is going to be that X-Force movie. But you could swap those two around and say that they can have the X-Force movie come right off the heels of the Deadpool movie and have the X-Men movie be the 2021. It just remains to be seen at this point how they're going to do that. But I know it was talked about that they were going to do Deadpool 1, Deadpool 2, and when they decided they were going to do Deadpool 2, it was this big talk about they wanted those to be produced together because Deadpool 3 was going to lead directly into the X-Force movie, and somehow they had a plan on how they want to do it. So it could be that coming out of June, and then that October movie would be the X-Force film, and then they just to give them a little breathing room on the X-Men franchise. Then that 2021 date, that March 5th, 2021 date would be the X-Men sequel to the Dark Phoenix. But again, that would put it out 3 years. I mean, it's still in a acceptable enough range. For some reason, I can't talk today. I think timeline-wise, the space between movies, that you could probably do that and get away with it. Either way, just depending. But a lot, I think, depends on, too, how these movies shake out in the box office and how much money they're putting into them, and that if they get return on investment. Because if Deadpool doesn't do as well, if not better than the first movie, could it hamper plans for Deadpool 3 or and the X-Force movie? So, again, it's going to be interesting to see when these movies drop what we got going on. I think that's all I have for you guys for this episode. I think the biggest thing too is with this, the key thing I think is lessening the role of the Jennifer Lawrence character, because she can't be the focal point going forward if you've recasted these integral pieces. Far as you have Sophie Turner as Jean Grey, and you have the other young kids in the roles of Cyclops and Storm. You casted them for a reason. You got to build them up, and to build them up, you got to take these other people from this other trilogy, and they have to start fading into the background. And I think, like I said, coming out of the Dark Phoenix, I really want to see, hey, take McAvoy off the board for a while so he can make a triumphant return in that sequel, maybe, and that some things have changed because he's been off at space for a amount of time. And I want to see, I think I love Fassbender because in this trilogy, Beginnings trilogy, he's fought so much against his good nature, and I feel like he can be a good instructor. And I love that run from the 80s when Magneto had the magenta pink outfit with the big M on it, the big white M, and he was running the school. I loved that run of the X-Men. I really did, where he was overseeing the X-Men and he was watching over the New Mutants. I love that run, that run in the 80s, the mid 80s. So I want to see that, because I think I'm intrigued by Fassbender's Eric Lesnar character. So I would like to see it. So if they're smart, maybe they will trend that way and do that story. I would like to see him for a short time lead the X-Men, because it has happened. If you read your comics history, he was the leader of the X-Men. Though I don't want to see that magenta pink outfit unitard with the long arm gloves that are magenta or pink. I'm going to say magenta because it's more manly than pink. But I can do without that outfit. But I just want to see him in that role. That's all I have for you guys this week. Again, check out these movies. These are great movies. If you haven't seen them, binge them. You can find them. You can find them everywhere. You can find them on, streaming services, iTunes, digital services, Amazon Video, all those kind of places. If you don't already own them, check them out. Go back and rewatch them. Some hold up better than others, and then others you're like, why did they make this movie? But you can find me on social media over on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Comic Book Savant. We also got the YouTube channel going on. Like I said, that's going extremely well. We're 13, 14 videos in. I do content that I don't cover here. So I've been doing some trade reviews. I've been talking about, comic video games related stuff. So I'm trying to, do little snippets to try to keep the content on the Facebook page under 10 minutes. A lot of it is like 5-6 minute range on average. Stop by, check it out. It's youtube.com/comic book savant. Again, if you'd like to help support the show, I have a Patreon for the podcast. It is patreon.com, patreon.com /comic book savant. You can contribute as little as $1 a month, or if you want, if you don't have it, I understand everyone doesn't have the money to contribute. Is other ways you can help me improve and grow the show. Send emails, feedback, follow on Twitter, Instagram, subscribe to the YouTube channel, share, like the videos. All those things just help me gain more exposure to the show, to bring in more people to listen, so we can keep improving the show. I have a lot of plans coming up for the next year. Like I said, I'm proud of myself because I try to go into each year setting goals. And the main goal I wanted to do for you guys is that I promised the YouTube channel for the longest time, and for multiple reasons, I didn't do it. And this year I did it. I said this year I was going to be more visible on and through social media. I've done that as well. At this point now, I just need financial backing to keep growing the show upward. I'm doing everything on my end. Anything that you guys can help do to support, I greatly appreciate it, and it keeps it going. Like I said, I want to travel and hit conventions up so I can start meeting, you listeners in person again like I used to, and different things like that, and improve equipment, video equipment, audio equipment, a lot of things. I want to up the production of the show. I think it's decent now, but I also think it can be better because the equipment that I've had for a while now, it needs to be upgraded. So those are some of the things that it will go into that, and what I'm trying to do to, like I said, keep it growing in a positive direction. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Let me know, drop me an email and let me know, or even send out a tweet to me and let me know if you like the fixing of episodes. I had a few more ideas of doing this for different franchises that I was playing with. We could do it also for TV shows. I just think it's kind of a cool thing to do. Like I said, the first one seemed kind of well received from the response that I got as far as the number of downloads and what have you, and likes that I got for the episode. So, So like I said, it can be an ongoing thing, and we can do it with more things. And if in your email or tweet or what have you, suggest other franchises you want me to do a fixing of episode on, and I'll do the research and lay it out and do another episode. Like I said, I think it's fun to talk about the history and see the future of different franchises and how they could potentially fix them if they choose to do so. That's a whole different thing, but at least we can talk about it and have some fun talking about it and speculating about it together. But that's all I have for you guys this week. I will see you again next week for another episode of Comic Book Savant. You have a good week and take care.
And into lyrical wholeness, and I know this, and I know this. This I know, this I know.